When I was over in the Isle of Man, I did a whole series of interviews actually, but the main one was on Manx Radio, which is a government-owned station, by the way. Unlike over in the UK, they actually allow me on. Despite pressure not to, by the way, a lot of pressure was applied to get me excluded from the meeting hall, to get me excluded from radio and interviews, etc. And the pressure in the main came from those people with financial interest directly in the new wind project. But it was resisted, and I'm very grateful for the fact it was, and I was at least allowed to be heard. But the opportunity to debate the Green Party leader from the Isle of Man was irresistible to me. Here, for the first time, I was able to actually face and discuss the evidence with somebody on the opposite side, as it were. Great news. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out as I expected. Now, this video has been published on YouTube by the Isle of Man Radio, and I'll give a link to it because that's the unedited version. What you're going to see now is edited by me, but I've excluded nothing from it. So I've just stopped to give comments at times. So here we go. This is Paul Burgess versus the Green Party. I'm hoping it will shock you.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Man and Line on Manx Radio. We're looking at renewable energy today, and also finding out about the Isle of Man Green Party. Leader Lamara Crane is here, elected Commissioner in Ramsey, of course. And Paul Burgess is giving a talk this evening at the Legion on Market Hill in Douglas. Paul's got many videos out on the web, on YouTube, and has talked at length about his views on renewable energy, and also there's one particularly for the Isle of Man. So, Faster Mike, good afternoon, Paul. Hi, Lamara.
Hi.
Okay. First of all, Paul, how come you've come to the Isle of Man today? I mean, you've got to talk tonight. What brings you to the Isle of Man?
I was invited to the Isle of Man by concerned residents. They asked me to look at the energy policy and what's going on here. And they're concerned about the possible consequences of what's happening in the Isle of Man. And frankly, it's a good job they did, because I have uncovered fundamental mistake in all the mathematics. Besides the whole energy policy, I'm afraid, is based on incorrect calculations.
Okay, and this is the report by. It was a report that they're taking those from, isn't it?
Yes, they're taking a pathway, and in the pathway they have a performance record, a performance yield from the wind farm, 3 times, up to 300% more than anyone else in the world. Scotland, more than 3 times that. And there was even a report done in 2010 for the Isle of Man government, and it's 3 times that as well, or 4 times that almost. So these figures that you've got for yield are completely incorrect. And it's so simple, the mathematics. I could explain this on the radio to people. It's that simple.
Okay,
So,
well, hopefully you will. Lamara Crane is here from the Green Party, and obviously the Isle of Man Green Party has its own, local action, global change. It was founded, 2016, I think, the Green Party over here. Is the Green Party behind the government's sustainable energy policy here?
Definitely. We are delighted that the government is pursuing the net zero programme, and we very much hope that it's going to be delivered. We are concerned that there is rhetoric out there that is based on incorrect information. It's not factual, it's not up to date, and also that purported expertise is being given when actually there is none to actually back that up. There is reports out from Manx Radio that state that Mr. Paul Burgess is a climate scientist. I'm not a climate scientist. I've never published a paper in a scientific journal that is, trusted and reliable and scientifically proved, and neither has Mr. Paul Burgess. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that he's neither a renewable energy expert nor a climate scientist, unlike is otherwise purported on the internet.
Okay. Do you think that in between all this is the public, is the people who are going to have to pay for the electricity of the future? We're going to need electricity come what may, because the server farms, people's microwaves, everything is going to have to run. And there's a perception that electricity is going to cost a lot more in the future and people's lives will go up. And that's fine for the very rich people, they can afford it. But for people who are, and obviously at the moment people are struggling with that. So looking forward, do you think this is going to be sustainable in terms of price for people on the Isle of Man?
Yes, the evidence out there indicates that electricity is the cheaper, wind and solar are the cheaper forms of electricity. So actually the price will decrease for people in pocket. Information is being put out there that's incorrect. If you look at reliable sources on the internet, such as the International Energy Agency and also the MUA, who has published their data on their website and has backed up their information, then you can see that it is all legitimate.
Of course, all of that is just garbage. It is totally untrue. This is from the MUA. This is from the very people that she just quoted. And when asked, will this make electricity cheaper, meaning the wind farm, the answer is the cost of generating a unit of electricity from what wind can be lower than the cost of generating from fossil fuels such as gas at the point of generation. However, the total system cost for all intermittent renewable power is expected to be higher because the balancing of the system is more challenging when the output predictions are dependent on the weather forecast. That's because they've got to keep the gas turbines turning, even though it's not producing anything, ready to step in to replace the wind. So the MUA, in this case the authority doing the wind farm, actually implementing it, say it'll be more expensive. But facts, well, don't let facts get in the way of Lamara here.
And that it is from a reliable source, and that some of the information that's going out there is actually out of date.
Okay. What does the Green Party think of nuclear energy?
We don't tend to discuss nuclear energy that often because we are a small island. It's unlikely that we would pursue that on island. I don't think it would be viable here.
No,
it's not
I just
something
mean
that...
in general, because we do consume nuclear electricity on the Isle of Man. It comes down the interconnector from the UK. So is the Green Party for or against nuclear energy in principle?
I think we have not properly discussed the principle of nuclear energy, and I think that there would be members in the party that would be in favour and some that would be less in favour. And I think that, you know, it would be something that actually wouldn't necessarily be relevant to the Isle of Man anyway. So
okay, so Paul Burgess, first things first, are you a climate scientist?
My work has been hydrological climate science, yes. I have worked at high levels. I actually was in charge of Wales. And my work involved forecasting. I had to work with the climate to forecast droughts, forecast floods. I was an expert in that. So I was actually having to look at the climate. In that hydroclimatology work I was doing, I uncovered the sun cycle in river flows, for example. I actually became quite famous for it in the 70s when I started that work.
You've been doing this for years.
I've been doing this, yes, and I also have sat on government quangos representing Wales. I've had government quangos closed down because they had incorrect information, right? I've had a whole, in one instance, I had 20 man-years work scrapped in 5 minutes because I exposed the mathematical incorrections in it, and that's the message I've got for the Isle of Man today. What Lamala just did was a personal attack, which is totally unjustified. But let me tell you something. In science, who you are appeals to authority don't matter. Try it on Einstein. 100 scientists wrote a book against him, appeared in papers. He was a clerk in an office. He was right. They were wrong. It's only people who don't understand science can make remarks that were made here as the opening remark, because it's totally unreasonable. There are two things you can't do in science. One is appeals to authority. That's like saying, my God's better than your God. It has no meaning. I will present you now with the figures and the facts of why the Isle of Man, whole basis of what Lamora is saying, is incorrect. And it's simple mathematics. I've got it on a piece of paper here. I'll hand you it. We can expose it. And it's simple. It couldn't be simpler. It only requires some multiplication and division.
Okay.
Nothing complicated.
Okay, well, I don't want the piece of paper. If you could explain it to the listener, that would be great.
That's fine.
What's the...
Let me explain it. Right. When you have a wind turbine, there's an optimum level that they'll publish with the wind turbine, right? So let's assume it's 100. Let's just take a figure of 100%. Now, when you subject the wind, you're not going to hold 100% for the whole year. So in this case, we've got 20 megawatts of wind going in. Yeah. So if you want to know what the theoretical limit is, you multiply 20 by 24 hours by 365. That's the total amount of energy in megawatt hours you can have in the year. But it's theoretical. It has no meaning. Yes. So what do we actually get? And that is the load factor. So what do we actually get out of it? Now, the load factors that are published by the UK government for Scotland, which is the windiest part, is 28.4%, which is perfectly reasonable. There's a reason for that I can explain, because as the wind drops, it actually drops very quickly. So if you drop the wind by a half, you actually reduce it eightfold. If you drop the wind even by 10%, you reduce it massively. So as soon as the wind drops away, because it's to the velocity to the power of 3, and I explain how to work it out on your phone now if anyone wanted to know, it drops away. Now, what you do is you take wind measurements with a machine, and you, over 5 years typically, by the way, and you can use different methods. Here they're using a sonar, and here they took the wind measurements in the winter, which is ridiculous. You can't do that. You've got to take it over the year. Now, the government in the UK published Scotland average 28.4. I will now read out some of the Scottish ones here. These are the top Scottish sites. And these are the load factors: 28.2, 28.4, 29.3, 23.8. But let's go into the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man in 2010 commissioned a report. And it looked at 10 or so places all around the Isle of Man. What could we get out of them? What load factors? And you know what they were in 2010 report? And I can give the link now. It's a very simple link. I could even put it over the phone. You can look up the report. And the load factors varied, where they look, between 19 and 31%. The average was 25%. Do you know what load factors you've now got in the Isle of Man? They're impossible. No one in the world has them. 57%, 74%, and 85%. Your costs are out by 200 to 300%, as is everything else. You've also missed out a loss of costs. Now, what I'm saying is so simple and basic, and I'll expose it tonight in full. It is so simple and basic that there is no doubt what I'm going to say now. The Isle of Man government, on simple mathematics, has to stop this whole programme and think again. Okay. It's as simple as that.
Okay. So just tell me, why are wind turbines all over the world? Why? I mean, when you go all over Germany, there are lots of wind turbines. Yeah. In Spain, there are wind turbines right throughout the mountains. Correct. There. Why are wind turbines everywhere?
They're there politically. It's not science, this. It's pure politics, which is why people like Lamara attack the person instead of attacking the evidence and the facts, right? Now, if you take Germany, if you take the windiest proportion in the world is Denmark. They've got the highest number of wind. They're the most expensive electricity in the world. Who's next? Germany. They're the next in line. They're the next most expensive electricity in the world. Who's third? UK. They're the third most expensive electricity in the world. If you go down the table of who has the most expensive electricity, they're the people with the most wind. And it's based on people who don't understand the physics, don't understand the science, who actually politically make statements that are ridiculous.
Okay, all right, okay, you've had your say. So, Lamara, are wind turbines political, not just for electricity?
Well, I think that wind turbines are for electricity, but obviously it's a political decision whether wind turbines are built because it's the government that's building them. So, yeah, talking about political parties, I'm here as a representative of the Isle of Man Green Party. I'm aware that For Britain is a political movement in the UK, which it appears Mr. Burgess has spoke about and has actually done talks for. And if you would like to confirm that you are a spokesperson and a committee member, because this party, excuse me, I have not finished. This political party is an anti-Islam and counter-jihad activist party, and which Mr. Paul Burgess has spoken about. And I haven't finished. Sorry,
we are here to talk about wind turbines.
Yes, but I have been brought here. I've been brought here as a political representative of my party. Now, it's only fair to identify the members that are speaking and whether he represents a political party or not. Now, I think that's only right. And for him to say that I'm attacking him personally is not incorrect. I am identifying his expertise in renewable energy and climate science, which is non-existent. So we do need to identify that, and so we need to make sure that that isn't pervaded to our society, and that they understand that he is not an expert on this matter. Also, the data that he has is actually completely out of date. The data shows that 45% up to 50% load factor can be achieved based on where the wind turbines are. So all of his calculations are out. Then based on out of date information. Current information is out there. It's quite easy to find. I'm happy as the Isle of Man Green Party to actually share that information, but it is available. The only thing that is also unfortunately available is YouTube videos, which don't show up-to-date data and can be made by anybody.
That was a huge diatribe of pure codswallop and ignorance. I shouldn't have to say this, but I am not a member of any political party. And for the record, just so you all know, I am appearing on the 27th of July on a celebration of what it's like to be British. And that celebration is probably in front of around about 30,000 people appearing in Trafalgar Square alongside Tommy Robinson, alongside Mayor Toosey, and I'll be dealing with the climate aspect of how people are trying to control your very lives down to the minute detail. So yeah, there I am, clearly. But I'm not a member of any political party, and all I've ever stated is do not support any party that supports net zero in any form. It's as simple as that. However, she is determined to have me deplatformed, and the vitriol she comes out with non-stop in this interview beggars belief. And after that personal direct attack, I wasn't allowed to respond.
So,
okay, all right. Let's get to the lines then. Let's go to Howard. Howard, you're live on Man in Line today.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Lamara, and Mr. Burgess, is it?
Okay,
Hello?
go ahead, Howard.
Yep. I just heard you saying you're speaking on behalf of the Isle of Man Green Party. Now, this is the question I was going to ask anyway. We've just had, well, for quite a number of years now, we've had people protesting against fossil fuels. We've just had an aircraft damaged yesterday, which is going to take long thousands of pounds to repair. It won't be able to fly again properly until such time as it's been inspected at a serious cost to the person who owns it. We're Stonehenge, we've had banks damaged, we've had windows broken. Do you, as the Isle of Man Green Party, back these people? Do you support these people, and would you encourage the same sort of activities here on the island as we are running fossil fuels and anticipating a fossil fuel farm out off Macklehead?
well, the Isle of Man Green Party has published numerous letters which we have sent to the Isle of Man government about the drilling that will happen, unfortunately, off the top of Macklehead, and we don't support that. We don't support the pursuit of fossil fuels around our island. We want renewable energy to be pursued. We want cheaper energy to be found, and the fact is that it's out there. Wind and solar are free and available. We simply need to harness it. Our Pulrose power plant harnesses at the moment energy from gas, which produces carbon dioxide and other pollutants. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our air clean, we're keeping our electricity prices cheap, and that we are making life better for people on the Isle of Man. We don't want to...
Lamara, please, you're giving a political decision on behalf of your company, your group. I didn't ask for that. That's out there in the public domain. What I'm asking you, do you support these fossil fuel protesters in the damage they're doing to the country and to people, artworks and everything? Does the Green Party Isle of Man support this, and would they encourage it?
Well, the Isle of Man Green Party is a political party, and we've set up as an organisation to combat things in a different way to what these protesters are doing. What they do is their own business. We probably align with some of the the kind of rhetoric that they speak about, but we're not taking those actions. You don't see Green Party members necessarily doing that, and if they are, then that's up to them, but that's certainly not part of the political party and our statute.
And what is your personal thought on them?
Well, as I've just said, it's up to them what they do. I haven't taken actions like those before, so I can't see that I would be doing so. What I do is I take action in a political sphere, and I'm on this radio show here to try and make sure that people, get the facts and aren't convinced by misinformation.
Okay.
Well, again, you're saying there it's political facts, and this is what it leads to: is the Green Party is unsubstantiated, but it is leading these people by the nose to cause the protests. And I'm afraid before long this is going to happen here on the island.
Well, Extinction Rebellion has been operating on the island previously. It then took a hiatus because the Isle of Man government was taking action, and I believe the members of Extinction Rebellion decided not to pursue any action going further. So unless the Isle of Man government backtracks, hopefully not, and doesn't take into the rhetoric that's out there that's coming from a very small minority, then we should be fine, and I don't think that any of that action would be warranted.
Okay, all right, thanks, Howard, and thanks. Sorry, you want to say something, Paul?
Yes, I do. Having been personally attacked by Stop Oil, and having had a Stop Oil person prosecuted successfully for violence against us, right? I would like Lamara to state that she does not support, personally, would not support any actions that they take to damage, because she didn't answer that previous question. But before that, I want to say something. You allowed her to do a very personal attack on me. Let me give you some facts. I have a Master of Science, a Bachelor of Science, chartered.
Same.
I'm chartered. Pardon?
Same, I have those.
Yes, but I have it in the right subject, Mara. Right, hold on. I was water resource engineer for the largest pump storage scheme in Europe, in Norwich, in Clanberis, right? I have a long history. I have done the hydroclimatology work in depth. I have uncovered sun cycles in the climate. I am fully qualified. I'm a member of Clintel, who only allow qualified scientists in. Right? So for her, in her ignorance, to be attacking me personally, rather than dealing with the data I've got. As for out-of-date data, the UK government current data, the world current data I'm taking, this is total fabrication on her part in a sort of make-believe world. And the worst part about this is she's leading down the path of incredible costs coming to the Isle of Man. And that's the part I want to uncover. And you'll have an opportunity tonight to listen to me, and I welcome all those against me tonight to appear.
Okay, I appreciate it. We're here, by the way, and attacks against people, the listeners will decide how much value that they have. We're here to find out information. The Green Party on the Isle of Man has elected representatives. They've been here since 2016, so we recognise that. So if you want to go and see Mr. Burgess tonight, he's there. We just really want to find out where the political party stands on the Isle of Man, and also how much it's going to cost. And Mr. Burgess will be explaining those things tonight. Personal feelings here, there, and everywhere. Well, you make your own decisions on those. Anyway, Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy, and hello to Lamara, and welcome to the Isle of Man, Paul.
Thank you.
Not much wind out there today. Actually, I noticed that Ronaldsway's giving a 0 knot reading on their thing at the minute, which is interesting. I've got two questions, so I'll go quick. First one is, when Lamara was on the Manning line in February, Andy asked you where the base load would come from, and you said battery systems would be perfect. So, Lamara, can you give details as to how much battery storage would cost the Isle of Man, and how it would work with our electricity supply? And then perhaps Paul could comment after.
So I don't have those figures to hand, and the figures will be out there. I am aware that the battery prices have come down considerably. I think they've halved in the last year, so that's wonderful news. I think that it's definitely something that we should look at in the future, and that costings would need to be had, but apart from that, there isn't anything out there at the minute. But I'm sure you've probably done your homework, haven't you?
So this is the leader of a political party. who has actually advocated the perfect solution being batteries. And I will now play a very small clip from the previous interview in the same studio from Lamora.
We've talked about many times about the base load, maintaining the base load at the power station, i.e. Making sure that people can turn the microwaves on when the wind doesn't blow. So where do you think the base load should come from? Should we retain Pulrose Power Station and burn gas, or what should happen?
So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's been lots of reports on this and that they are going to have to overlap somewhat as we roll out the renewable investment. Basically, we would need some kind of storage, so battery systems would be perfect, and ideally it would allow to work in between when it's nice and sunny, so we can use lots of solar, and then when the wind isn't blowing, you've got that battery storage source of power.
This lady and the real world facts departed each other long ago. Advocating the perfect solution without even a beginning of the understanding of the costs involved. Not any clue, but still advocating this is the future. Already I've shown that the Isle of Man Utilities Company do agree that electricity will be more expensive, going totally against her little agenda here. But on top of this, just look at the costs of battery power, and I explain it in my response.
Paul's the expert, as far as I can see, so perhaps Paul would like to comment.
Yeah, I've actually done the calculations based on current prices, and let me give you it. I've got it on a sheet of paper here as well. I'll just pass it. I've got a copy for you, Lamora. Right, so you understand. This is based on Pillswood in the UK. They have 196 megawatt hour battery storage, 75 million. 75 million. That would last the Isle of Man at its peak rate 2.45 hours, and it would last at your an average rate 4.27 hours, say between 2 and 5 hours. But you actually need something like 9 days, because you had 9 days in 2018 without any wind. To cope with that, the cost, Lamara, is 3,787 million. I'll repeat that figure for the Isle of Man. For the Isle of Man, the cost of putting a battery in to back up your power supply at current levels is 3,787 million. And the cost basis for that is the current price of Pillswood, which you can look up, anyone can look it up. It's 75 million for 196 megawatt hours. That's all you get. Now you're drawing electricity at your peak around about 70, 80, right? And you've got 196. That's how you get the timings. It's as simple as that, right? So a party you've got here is putting forward a thing saying the best storage is batteries, like she did on your last show, like Laura did on your last show, and no idea of the cost. This is how out in the blue the Green Party is. 3,787 millions. That's how much. And again, dispute it. Tell me I'm not up to date. These are current prices. Pillswood, look it up on the internet. Look up the price. Look up what you get. It's there. And this is typical of people who've got an agenda rather than the science. From me, you'll get the facts and the science.
Okay. Julian, what's your next question?
You touched on this a little bit earlier. We've got the MUA giving figures for the energy generation from Erie Staine, giving capacity factors of somewhere between 57 to 84%. Now, the UK has a page, and I'll say it quickly. If anyone looks up calculating the level of the renewables obligation for 2024 to 2025, and as Paul has said, they're giving an average of 26% as the amount in the year. It's a bit like somebody turning up for work. You've also got DEFRA in 2010, which is only 13 years ago, and I don't think our weather is a quantum leap difference, and wind turbine technology hasn't jumped that much in the last 20 years. DEFRA's document is titled AEA/ED46657, and it is indicating on page 5 of the DEFRA report that the capacity factor for the island is 25%, which is pretty close to Scotland, it's pretty close to Ireland. All our neighbours are getting, according to the UK, and this is a very recent report, 26%. So, Lamara, if the MUA's current figure is 3 times more than what the DEFRA report was, how can that be? And also, if Tynwald has just voted for the net zero pushing forward on that agenda, if the politicians are being spoon-fed figures that are 3 times more than the UK have found and 3 times more than the DEFRA report was, how can you reconcile those two things?
Can you confirm the date that DEFRA report was?
2010. AEA,
Yeah. So,
ED,
so I don't need the reference number. It's 14 years out of date. That's why it's different. 14 years is a very long time when it comes to renewable energy. Everything is changing year by year. The load factors right now are very much higher, and this is the problem that we're seeing nowadays, right?
The actual problem we're seeing nowadays is pure BS like this. This is the UK government's graph of onshore load factors, and you can see they're unchanged since 2011 there. Okay, so what she's claiming is simply not true. And by the way, the load factors vary year by year depending on the wind, and that's the variation we're seeing, nothing else. Time and time again this woman is stuck. So what she does is she just invents things. You can see the brain ticking away there, some sort of new invention coming out. Facts play no part.
So Mr. Paul Burgess here, he has, basically spent a lot of time going out there, going onto the internet, making YouTube videos to debate climate science and cherry-picking information. The problem with cherry-picking information is that it's full of confirmation bias. So it's really easy to go on and find the data that you want, even if it's 14 years out of date, and then purport that it's correct rather than actually looking at everything in context and going out and finding reliable information. So it's really dangerous actually that this kind of rhetoric is allowed to pervade, and where it's come from is, so climate deniers used to be in the category of like old denial, where they'd say climate change didn't exist, that humans weren't responsible for CO2 emissions, that the CO2 emissions weren't causing temperature increases. But what we see nowadays is new denial. So there's a new form of climate deniers. And basically what they're saying is, yes, that they agree to climate change and that the temperature's increasing and humans are responsible. But what they're saying is that now that, oh no, it's fine because carbon is great for the planet, that we won't be in an ice age. And basically their objective is to make sure that renewable energy seems dangerous, harmful, expensive and pointless.
Well, it is pointless. There is absolutely no point in it. It does increase the prices to you enormously, and it is dangerous. Just ask the birds. Ask the 90% reduction in diving birds off the Dutch coast there. Ask the 200,000 bats a year killed in Germany by wind farms. So it depends on what your perspective is. From the point of view of nature, highly dangerous. From the point of view of economics, extremely expensive. So yeah, I want to see a stop to it. It is total madness.
And this is their narrative. This is what they're trying to do, because it all stems back to a motivation and an ideology that is quite questionable, to be honest. And I do think that's why it's so important that we raise our political associations and where we're standing from and our expertise, because we need to be able to show what we are in an upfront perspective, so that people know who they're listening to and where this information is coming from. And if the information is 14 years out of date, then it's not relevant anymore. Okay. And new information needs to be presented.
Okay, final word, Julian.
Yeah, Lamari, you mentioned a load factor of 50%. A, where did you get that from, so I can go and have a look at it, please? And B, 50% is a lot less than the 84% that the MEA are talking about. So can you just answer those two questions before I go?
Yeah, I'll send it to you later.
There is, of course, no answer to those two questions. That wouldn't drop our entire argument in it. And, of course, I checked. She did not send the information later, but it's the only way of her escaping that very good and simple question. That goes right to the heart of the economics of the entire Isle of Man wind farm project.
how are you going to? Well, can you not just say? I mean, you are the Green Party head. Surely, if you're coming up with 50% load factors, where is this? And is it anywhere near the UK? Because if it's somewhere else, it's not relevant.
So the International Energy Agency has lots of information on that. Wind is another one, which is a European entity that deals with wind turbines. There's plenty of sources that are reliable on the internet, and that's what's really important, because at the moment, YouTube is making a lot of money from content that's derived from old and new denial of climate change, and it's really dangerous to allow that to happen, basically. Sorry?
I'd like to get a word in.
Okay, well, hang on, I'll decide who talks.
Given that she was being given so much time to ramble on about absolute nonsense, I just wanted the opportunity to combat what she was saying, but I was denied it. I was even denied the opportunity of countering her personal attacks. In fairness, though, maybe the presenter understood that Lamara was burying herself, and when this was published in the Isle of Man, this video, on their site, and I'll give you the link in the description, 98% of the comments were disgusted with her.
Just a final word, Julian.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about sources of data, I've just read out the UK's own website.
Okay.
I mean, the UK government site. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm directly from gov.uk. So I don't understand where you're coming from with European and other things. I mean, I've not found it anywhere else. So if we can't rely on the UK's figures, who are we going to rely on?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Julian. Good to hear from you. We're here with Lamara Crane, leader of the Isle of Man Green Party, and Paul Burgess, who's giving a talk tonight. We're trying to get through all this just to find out what it's going to mean to the Isle of Man. Obviously, the UK has their own issues, but we're talking about the Isle of Man. And we have to pay for ourselves. Our money comes from the taxation that's generated on the Isle of Man. We get nothing from the UK. Remember, we are net contributors to the UK economy. So we have to pay for all this ourselves. And that will mean, if it's electricity, you and I will have to pay for it in the electricity we use. We'll find out more in a moment.
The Isle of Man Creamery Farmers Cooperative was founded in 1934.
Nation Station, Manx Radio and Orchard Recruitment.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
Talking to Paul Burgess, who's giving a talk tonight at the Manx Legion Club at 7:30. Lamara Crane is the leader of the Isle of Man Green Party, and we're trying to find out what net zero is going to mean to the Isle of Man, what renewable energy is going to mean on the Isle of Man. Paul Burgess, do you think, I mean, if wind turbines are on the Isle of Man, will it mean the end of Pulrose Power Station?
Right, let me explain something there. But first of all, can I address this whole data thing? Because on wind, it's very important.
If you would briefly,
The physics are the same. The physics are exactly the same. When the wind blows onto a wind turbine, you're taking the energy, the velocity energy out of the wind and convert it to electric. Right. If you look at wind, all the wind formula, they end up with V, that's the velocity of the wind, to the power of 3. So the actual yield is almost independent of time. There's no understanding of the engineering here on the other side, I'm afraid. None at all. So the date doesn't matter. These were proper, qualified people who came up with it. They agree, by the way, what they did agrees with the current government in Ireland, agrees with the current government in Scotland, agrees with the current government in England. Okay. So to say it's to do with age is just pure ignorance. I'm sorry. So the effect will be this. You've got to back up wind with gas. There is no alternative. I've just explained that to use batteries on Lamara's work is £3,787 million to back up your current demand, right? So you've got to use gas. Now, the funny part is, and there's a Green Movement, I published a video on this to do with the Isle of Man before I came here, but a Green Movement said the truth is, analysts all know this, when you mix wind with gas, you get a much more expensive end result, and it puts the price of gas up. I can explain that. If you're only getting the average yield you're going to get from your 20 is about 5.4. The average throughout the year is 5.4 megawatts. Your base load's about 25, right? So you're not even covering that, and that's going to vary between 0 and 20, right? That's the range. So what you're going to have is gas to back it up. But the gas now has to back up 100%. It'd be backing up 100% at the moment in this weather. When it's backing up 100%, it needs the same staff, the same infrastructure, the same overheads, the same costs of all the gas. but they actually have less productivity. Also, they've got to keep on turning. You've got what's called a closed circuit gas station or an open circuit. An open circuit can quickly back up wind. Closed circuit is much slower. So they've got to keep the gas running and the gas turbines running, waiting for the wind to drop. There's an extra cost there, totally ignored. And that's the difference between closed and open circuit. I'm a chartered engineer, and so this is basic stuff. This is not complicated. And so that is a point. So the end result is you have a much more expensive mix, which is why Denmark has the highest prices in the world, then Germany, and then the UK, coming up fast.
Okay, so
that's why.
Let me just paraphrase then. There are peaks and troughs in demand, and there are peaks and troughs in wind yield, and they don't often coincide. So we need a gas turbine to back up the troughs in generation and the peaks in demand for that, and we have to keep the gas power station.
You've got to. There's no choice.
Okay. Neil, you're live with our guest today. Hello, Neil.
Good afternoon, Andy. Thanks for your help, and good afternoon to your guests. I also work in a science environment in a laboratory, but also in common with Lamara, I have a keen environmental aspect to my life as well. I grow all my own vegetables and fruit. I don't spray, etc. And my uncle farmed here for 86 years, and he was saying 25 or 30 years ago that undoubtedly the climate is changing. So as a society, we clearly have to address that. However, what I find strange is that for me, and I'm speaking personally here, I think the only form of sustainable green energy is actually nuclear going forward. I cannot see how wind and solar are going to accommodate the Isle of Man, and it's been a very, very balanced and informative discussion, actually, which you've had on today, Andy. Also, another thing which concerns me is that I think this whole fiasco, this whole project is to accommodate the business lobby once again, because I have a farming friend who farms in the Beery Mountain area, and his family have already been approached by a satellite company, which once he did his investigation, he discovered it belonged to the Peel Group, and they want to acquire 350 acres of mountain land in the Beery area simply to accommodate wind project plans. So for me, this whole agenda, this whole policy of wind projects on the island is purely based on greed, again, from the business community here. So I would like to ask Tamara, why does the Green Party not support nuclear? Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that back up. I will ask my party. I don't think it's anything like I've said that we've discussed at length before, because it's been dismissed that it wouldn't be worth looking at for the island. That is in Professor Curran's report as well, which unfortunately Mr. Burgess does not agree with. That was put out by a professional, by an expert, and not by someone who is aligned with the new denial version of climate denial. And that's the problem. I think that what we really have here is today on the show is that basically somebody who is completely against the idea of climate change, because only 2 years ago he was publishing videos that basically denied the existence of climate change.
Well, it's one lie after the other. I have never denied the existence of climate change. In fact, I've argued for the climate cycles. My work was in climate cycles, etc. So to say that is ridiculous. What I disagree with, and have always done, is the fact you've got a control knob called CO2, and somehow mankind can control the climate with this one knob. That is absurd. Climate change is here, has always been here, and if anything, the denialists are people like this woman here.
He's now changed. I watched one this morning. You can see it 2 years ago, October 2021.
Just stop that lying.
So
I've always said there's climate change.
Okay,
it's on YouTube, so you can see it. But the issue is that I want to digress from your question, because I feel like I've covered it. But the problem is that there is a rhetoric here, and it's quite dangerous. Right. And by putting out information that isn't correct, then it's going to potentially damage
Lamara,
what a positive thing that's happening on the Isle of Man.
That's your opinion. That's not fact. That's
No,
your opinion.
so
Okay?
what
This
is
is
being...
an opinion program. That's your opinion.
That's my opinion,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, the factual data that Mr. Burgess is putting out is incorrect.
Okay.
The calculations are based on wrong data,
Okay.
so
well,
it
the
is
public
incorrect.
will find that out when the public take the time to look at it. They'll draw their own conclusions.
Well, I hope so, but
okay.
they need to bear that in mind.
Just bearing in mind what Neil was saying, is the Green Party being played by big business?
No, I don't believe
No?
so. I mean, I don't have any contact
No,
with
I'm talking
big...
about existentially. Has big business latched on to green energy to make lots of money?
I'm actually really pleased that you've come onto this because
No,
business,
he said it.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean that it's been raised up in this conversation because big business has always supported climate change denial. So you can look at Exxon, who spent 30 million trying to deny climate change that their own scientists discovered. And no matter how many huffs that Mr. Burgess exhales, it's a fact. And there is consensus out there. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a nice tongue twister, the fact is 99% of scientists agree that there's climate change. The new denial version of climate change is denying that any actions taken to combat climate change are pointless, expensive, and harmful. Okay. And that's what we're listening to today. So everybody needs to bear that in mind. And another thing that needs to be bared in mind is that the reason why climate change denial has grown so much is because it profits big business. They have made so much money out of fossil fuels, and the far right and right-wing policies all stem and support climate change denial. And that is something that we probably should consider here because Mr. Burgess has, interviewed with Tommy Robinson from EDL, who's a far right winger.
This has got nothing whatsoever to do with the subject, but just for the record, I did an interview about my life story with Tommy Robinson. I made a documentary about his life, 3 50-minute episodes. That's how I met him, by the way. And he left the EDL years ago. Why? Because racists came in. Their slogan used to be black and white unite. The exact opposite of the racist party this sort of person paints.
Lamara, this has got nothing to do with the Isle of Man. We're here to talk about the Isle of Man.
It really has, though, because this person is speaking on a Manx radio show.
And the people of the Isle of Man will make their own decisions. And here is, we got Mark with us. Hi, Mark.
Before Mark asks his question, I would just point out, all these attacks are coming my way, and I'm not being allowed to respond to them.
Yeah, hi, Andy. Just to add to the Green Party's position, that's the I think one of your clients are asking about the Green Party's position with regards to nuclear. That's the Green Party's view in the Isle of Man. The Green Party's view in Finland is actually pro-nuclear, and that adds to the complexity of this whole subject. But I just wanted to ask a couple of questions to the panel. Do they know where the majority of the renewable assets are manufactured? When I say assets, that's wind turbines and solar panels. Do the panel know where the majority of these assets are actually manufactured?
Over 90%, I think 95% of solar panels are manufactured in China. The wind farms are manufactured in China. These are all transported across oceans, etc. We actually export the jobs. The idea that we create green jobs is absolutely nonsense, by the way. We get rid of industry. So now when we buy steel...
I just wanted a yes or no. And I'll answer that question to the Green Party member. Do you know where the majority of the green assets are manufactured? Is it Tamara? Sorry, I don't...
Lamara Crane. So they're obviously not manufactured on the Isle of Man.
No. If you answer, do you know where they're manufactured?
Yes.
Yes or no?
But they are obviously not manufactured on the Isle of Man, and the whole point is that we would have them brought over to the Isle of Man, and there are studies showing how that will be done. But the point here is that...
So I'm just going to interrupt you, Lamara, sorry. So I think we're all agreed 90%, it's 80 to 90% are manufactured in China. Do you know which country is the biggest polluter in the world, and that opens 8 new coal power stations every month? Which country is that?
We're running out of time, so if you could just have the conversation.
It's China.
Yeah.
It's China. And I think that's the problem with, and I hate the whole politicization of this, but the issue with the Green Party generally at the moment is that it's a very complex subject. I'm for transition, but there isn't a magic bullet here. And, we are going to have wind turbines over here as part of the transition. But to say they're actually completely green is a nonsense. But it's an evolving process. And I think I'd be interested in Lamara's view on the gas as well, whether she considers that a polluter. The Green Party in Finland consider gas as a renewable transition fuel, as does the European Union. And I think I'm just interested in her view on transition, whether she thinks gas is a transition fuel, yes or no, and whether she disagrees with the Green Party's view in Finland.
Well, on the Isle of Man at the moment, we use gas, and I use gas to heat the water in my property. I don't feel too much guilt or shame in that, because that's unfortunately the situation the Isle of Man is in currently. But what I'm here to do is to pursue the transition and to have renewable energy on the Isle of Man, which is cheap and it's free to access as far as obtaining that resource, and that we will need to spend money harnessing it. So yes, we will need to pay for wind turbines from China or solar panels from China or anywhere else that then supplies better or products in the future. But the fact is, we know that there is still a cost with regards to carbon emissions, but we are doing our best to reduce them, and that's the aim. The IPCC have put out dozens of reports about how this should be achieved, and the danger is that we're not going to follow their advice, and that people will be misinformed and misled, and that we should really he keeps huffing. We should really listen to the real experts that are out there and pursue that agenda. And that, yes, okay, it is political as to how many we build, where we build them, because that's a government decision. And that's one of the things that has been mentioned in Mr. Burgess's videos, is that there's constraint payments, and who would the MUA would need to pay for when the wind turbines are providing too much energy. But that's simply not the case, because it's government owned. So who would they pay? Who would they compensate? No one. It's them.
Mark?
Let me explain that better. In the UK, we have constraint payments. This is where we don't need the wind, such as overnight, and there's a lot of wind power available. We don't want it. We can't put it in the grid. The grid has to be kept in balance. So we pay them not to give us the power. Sometimes, more than half the time, some wind farms paid not to give us the power. Now, as wind rises, the amount of wind energy rises in the UK, this is going to become an enormous payment. We can be paying 3 times the amount for the power they're actually consuming, because we have to pay for everything they're capable of. But the load factor we've talked about, the 27% in this case, which is the estimate for the Isle of Man based on UK figures, current UK figures, that is based on including the constraints. So if you don't pay yourself in the Isle of Man, it's government owned, you reduce the 27% maybe down to 15%. You are still paying for it. There's no magic thing here. You are still paying for it, because now you're getting a lot less bang for the buck out of the wind. No way out of that, Lamara.
So from what Lamara said, she's actually pro-gas as a transition fuel. Is that correct, Lamara?
I'm not pro-gas, like, yay, let's use gas. I recognise that, unfortunately, we're in the situation where we have to use gas, and that we will transition to a renewable energy sources over the coming years.
Great. I think that's a very sort of a moderate and sensible approach, Lamara. Nothing else from my side, Andy. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for calling today, Mark. Paul, you want to say something?
Yeah, a few things there. First of all, the IPCC, I'll be quoting tonight, big time, because the IPCC support that humankind has had no interference with heat waves, with forest fires, with floods, with droughts, and so on. And my data comes from the latest report of the IPCC. What it does not come from is the political spin report made by politicians by the IPCC. I respect the IPCC data. I also will be quoting tonight the Royal Meteorological Society in Britain, who I agree with, about the reduction in storms. Last night I listened to your Parliament, a bit of your Parliament talk, and it was painful to listen to, but somebody noted that you've got the longest record here on sea surface temperatures, apparently. And they said for the last 20 years it's warmed. And they're completely correct on that, by the way. It has warmed. But what they don't understand is the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, which warms the northern Atlantic from the equator right up to the top, and it warms it by 0.55 C, and that is on a 35-year base. So we started that in 1998, and we've had warming. Before that, we had cooling. Before that, we had warming. So people don't understand the climate science behind it. And so tonight, I'll be doing all of that. And I really welcome people who are confused by this conversation today. But what I've given you in this conversation so far are the data, the current data I can give you the current data from Ireland, Scotland, and England. I'm not inventing these load factors.
Okay.
The load factors you've got are pie in the sky. And sometime in the future, people can listen to this and they will know you've got to withdraw your entire plan because the whole mathematics calculations are all wrong.
Okay. Your talk tonight is called Why Net Zero Will Be a Disaster for the Isle of Man. Change my mind.
Yes.
What could change your mind, Mr. Burgess?
Well, I don't think anything can, but if you give me evidence and facts. And
do you have an open mind about this?
Yeah, I'm a scientist. There's no such thing as settled science. There's no such thing as consensus in science either, by the way. The 99% is total nonsense, but there's no such thing as consensus. They have no place in science. An appeal to authority. I start my talk tonight with a quote from the latest physics Nobel Prize winner. Yeah? And his words are that the whole CO2 thing is a load of ... Yes? I start the talk with that. And then I immediately tell everyone what I've just shown you is a leading world physicist on my side. But that doesn't mean a thing, because I have to show you his work for it to mean a thing. What you do in science, you go on evidence. And all Lamara's done is lots of spin, a hairy-fairy spin. But she's going on about, the wind somehow has changed in the last 14 years. The physics of a turbine depend on the wind. They depend on something independent of the turbine.
Okay.
And that is the key. So it's total nonsense. It's like listening to a child.
Okay.
As regards technical.
Let's keep the personal references out there, because the public, the audience, wants to find out the middle ground of this, because, as I say, they're the ones that are going to have to pay the electricity bills in the future. Lamara, have you heard anything at all today that's changed your mind in any way?
Oh, no, it's just really worried me, to be honest, that someone that's, has opinions of both old and new denial of climate change is allowed to be up on this radio show. And basically...
Hang on a minute. The public makes their decision.
Yeah,
the public's decide, and the public will hear both sides.
I hope Courtney Hedding and David Ashford, will be up here talking about anti-vaxxers next time.
All right. Thanks for when's the next Green Party meeting, by the way?
We have one at the moment once a month, and we are formulating our policies for the programme of government, and we publish this on our Facebook and website. So if any members would like to come along, they can.
What's the website, Lamara?
It's greenparty.in.
Right. Tomorrow, we've been with Paul Burgess and Lamara Crane today. Tomorrow, Laurie Hooper is in, the Health and Social Care Minister. We'll be talking about...
That was a very hard hour for me, actually, because I was so frustrated by what she was allowed to say, the personal attacks I couldn't respond to. But then again, I'm going to give the link below this video, but if you look at the original recording published out there by Manx Radio, I guess 99% of the comments were anti-Lamora and supported me. They were absolutely devastating against her. I think one comment was she's put the Green Party in the Isle of Man back 20 years, So, in effect, I won. But I don't like to win that way. I'd rather win on evidence. And she didn't present any. It was just constant smears. And the danger, when she goes on about the danger, is that such ignorant people can be allowed to have any place in politics at all. But even then, I wouldn't advocate them being banned, because I believe in freedom of speech. And if they want to be stupid like that, let them expose themselves. That's all I can say. Now, I can tell you, there's lots of things now going on in the Isle of Man. I've done many interviews there, lots of things, and the Isle of Man utilities people have actually directly responded to me, explaining how they got these magic figures, 3 times more than everybody else, etc. And I'll be responding to that in a major video in some depth And I would like every person on the Isle of Man to watch that. But listen to both sides. Listen to them and me. I also know that since then there's been what's called a debate. The Isle of Man newspaper group or something, which is owned by the government, by the way, there, had a debate. And they included people who'd called me a fascist and so on, who actually were the PR consultants for the wind farms. They included the financiers, who also had a big go at me, financiers of the wind farms and so on. And that wasn't a debate. Every single person there was on the same page. And this is how government hope to push it through, do they? By just asserting, we are the boss, we know what we're talking about. Well, in this case, I'm hoping we can get enough going in the Isle of Man for people to understand that the science is wrong about the climate change alarmism that they're spreading. It truly is wrong. And you do need to stop what's going on. Otherwise, you're going to go down the road that lots of people are a bit ahead of you there, and they're beginning to backtrack, right? You've got to backtrack. Net zero is impossible. I mean, today, Vauxhall have said they simply can't afford the fines of electric cars. I mean, I know this year, just insurance on electric cars in the UK has shot up 80% in 1 year. In 1 year, 80% increase. And, so it's become more and more unaffordable. There is really, truly no choice for the car manufacturers. They're going to have to close down or get out or something big because they can't afford the £15,000 fine that's going to be involved in selling every car in the UK. That's not Isle of Man. Isle of Man's an independent democracy. So there we are with this one, and there's a whole series, and I'm using the Isle of Man as a microcosm of the UK, if you like, because what we're doing there has a big influence, can spread everywhere. And I think we can hold, and it isn't just me, it's a team behind me now, and I think we can hold the Isle of Man government and the Utilities Authority to account. I really think we can. And they're going to have to answer an awful lot, because what's happening is the blinds are being lifted off the people of the Isle of Man. Big businesses involved in this and lots of money. Lots of money. Okay, so there we are. Anyway, it's been a long video. I can't help it. Thank you for watching. Bye.